Hi, I'm going to talk about my food favourite items from the month of April. I did a video like this for the month of March and it was lots of fun, so I thought I'd do it more regularly. The first thing I wanted to mention is an article from the Guardian long reads, which was about sugar. I'll put the link in the description box below. And it was about sugar and the rise and fall and rise again of the demonisation of sugar, or the identification of sugar as a significant contributor to obesity and a lot of what's called Western style diseases, which are a result of lifestyle. And it talked about Robert Lustig and how he's been very important in tracing the importance of sugar as causing a lot of inflammatory and diet-related diseases in the Western diet, but also pointed to a British scientist who'd been working in the 1960s, John Yudkin, and how his research had been rejected by scientists, by nutritionists, and he'd died a very embittered man who'd been absolutely castigated by all his colleagues, and he was considered a bit of a crank. And it's this incredible article because it's about sugar and it's about nutrition science, but it's also about intrigues within the scientific community, about how an individual can be utterly shunned by their colleague for saying something which we come back to and realise actually made a lot of sense. So I really recommend the Guardian long reads. Actually, another recent article I read, which is kind of food related, is about wet addiction centres or rehabilitation centres, i.e. an alcohol rehabilitation centre which serves the inhabitants or the clients alcohol to help them cope with their condition and stabilise them and return them to a normal life. And that was an extraordinarily moving piece. So I would say the Guardian long reads generally, but specifically their ones about food, of course, are of special interest to me. And I'll put the links to both of them below. They're really well written. They are long, obviously, hence the term long read, but they're great for a commute or when you have a long time to spend with them. I actually prefer reading them on paper rather than on a screen, but that's just the way I work. They're great and an example of really, really excellent quality journalism, so highly recommend those. First thing I wanted to mention onto food favourites proper is my recipe of the month, and it comes from Ruby Tando's cookbook Crumb, and it is her milk loaf. Ruby Tando was a finalist from a couple of years ago on the Great British Bake Off, and she went on to have a baking column in The Guardian, and this milk loaf is baked in a tin. She puts it under the category of tin loaves, and it was so simple to put together. It was just based on normal store-cupboard ingredients: flour, yeast, salt, milk, obviously. It came out beautifully. The recipe was absolutely perfect. It guided me really well. And the taste was incredible. It had this soft, creamy flavour, really, really simple, but really delicious as well, and had this soft, delicate, pillowy texture as well. And it's not one of those chewy sourdough loaves, which I love as well, but it's just a beautiful example of a lovely white bread, miles away from the very pappy, bland loaves you get in the supermarket, and a real reminder, funnily enough, of why white bread has been so prized throughout history. It was delicious, and that's not really something I associate with white bread. I never really think of it as having a flavour in and of itself, but this did, and I can't emphasise how perfectly the recipe worked, and that's not something that always happens in cookbooks. Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to adapt, and I think that it was excellent. So that's from Crumb by Ruby Tando. Okay, on to my most recent obsession, which is Skyr, as anyone who has seen my Instagram account in about the last 6 weeks will have seen. that I have become completely obsessed with skyr, and I'm eating it all the time. Skyr is an Icelandic cultured dairy product similar to yogurt, and I came across it because a colleague at work was eating it, and she happened to say, oh, I'm really enjoying this skyr. And the same day I was in the supermarket and I happened to see it, and I was looking at the label and I saw that it was really low in fat and very high in protein, and I have this big thing about increasing my protein consumption if possible. And so based on her recommendation, I just bought it. And this one that I'm holding up is the most widely available brand, which is Arla, and it's actually Danish, not Icelandic. You can buy genuine Icelandic skyr, which is made in Iceland with the Icelandic cultures from cooperatives there in Waitrose, so do check it out if you want to support Icelandic dairies, which I think is quite important because obviously this is a traditional Icelandic dish, and Iceland has not had the most easy economic circumstances over the well, since 2008, really, 2007, 2008. So on to why I love skyr. It has a very dense, thick texture, much denser even than Greek yogurt, much thicker. It really, in terms of texture, brings to mind something like sour cream or creme fraiche. It sort of stands up by itself. And it has this quite mild tang, so it's not very assertive, it's not very sour like a lot of natural or Greek yogurts can be. So it feels very comforting and indulgent at the same time, even though it's very low in fat. It's very filling, which is probably because of the protein, and the flavoured versions. I've tried the strawberry skyr from Arla, and I've tried the honey skyr from the Icelandic dairy cooperatives that you can buy in Waitrose. The flavoured versions are not too sweet, which is great because a lot of ordinary yogurts are absolutely packed with sugar and they taste like a pudding. So I really love this this yogurt, and I've been enjoying the plain version with a bit of agave nectar, blueberries and pecans, and with raspberries and some chestnut jam that a friend brought back for me from France, which is actually really indulgent and more like a dessert or almost like an afternoon tea snack, which I really enjoyed. But with berries, it's absolutely delicious, or even just on its own sometimes, and I just find it really fills me up. And I've been having it where you might have yogurt, such as with granola and so on in the mornings for breakfast. I think it's absolutely delicious, and I can't see myself going without this for a long time. Actually, I think I'll be enjoying it, and it's going to be a good breakfast now that it's getting really warm as well, because now I want something cooling and light and refreshing, and skyr is definitely all of that. So the next thing I'm going to mention is a grater, and more specifically the Microplane grater. When I first got into food and cooking as a leisure activity, which was in my late teens, the big thing that everyone was talking about on blogs and in food forums and food articles was the Microplane grater. And I never got into them, I never bought one, because I just thought they were quite expensive for what they were, which is a grater. I didn't see how life-changing they could be, and I don't really usually like these handheld ones that you have to hold above a bowl. I found them messy, and they sometimes make your wrist ache if you're grating a lot of things, and I just preferred those box graters that you can set on a plate or on a chopping board and feel very stable, so I never bothered with them. I recently went to Lakeland and I had a voucher and I saw these, this one actually, and I thought, oh, I'll get it because I needed a fine grater for some nutmeg and other things like that. So I thought, oh, I might as well give the Microplane a go because I had this £5 off voucher. And so I have had to eat all of my words or thoughts about the Microplane. It is life-changing, it is amazing. This fine one absolutely pulverizes garlic and ginger. It turns it into a paste, and it just obliterates things like Parmesan and turns it into this very fine dust, which is great actually, because you can grate up a tiny amount of Parmesan and it will turn into this huge billowing pile which you can sprinkle over your food and really feel like you're having loads of it, but you've had a tiny amount, which is good for high-fat ingredients like cheese, but it's fantastic in turning zest into dust for cakes and things like that, and grated chocolate. It just makes these beautiful chocolate crumbs, and it's so sharp and easy to use, and because it is so sharp, it means you don't have that aching wrist phenomenon where you feel like you have to press the food that you're grating really hard against it. It just cuts through it really quickly, and I find them easy to clean as well. So I have obviously gone Microplane mad. I have bought the others, and they're all equally razor sharp and effortless. I would say if you only wanted to get one, the fine one for me was the most life-changing, dare I say it. It's good for cheese, zest, garlic, ginger, anything really. I can't think of anything it wouldn't be good for. It's good for nutmeg as well, and it does grate it down into very fine particles. So Microplane graters, unexpectedly life-changing. I can't live without them now. This item is rice cakes. Very exciting. I actually do eat a lot of rice cakes. They are more portable and convenient than bread if you're eating soup at work, and I eat a lot of soup at work. And they're very low calorie as well compared to bread, because a slice of bread is around 100 calories and a rice cake is usually around 30 odd calories, so you save quite a lot there, and I find them quite filling. I usually get the plain ones, and I actually quite like them, especially the ones from Callow, which are all low fat, organic, very low in salt and whole grain. And just on a whim really, I bought the spicy chili flavour, and it is pretty amazing. It's very savoury. It obviously is a bit more interesting than a plain rice cake. It's not, I don't find it that spicy actually. I don't know if it's just that I have amazing heat tolerance, but I genuinely don't think that it's very spicy. What I really like is that it's not a sweet chili flavour, which I don't really enjoy that, because I do find that very sweet. Usually sweet chili crisps and so on, they taste very sugary to me. And this is cayenne, black pepper and smoked chilies, and that smokiness, it gives it an almost chorizo-like flavour, which is obviously the best, although it's vegetarian. And they're only 32 calories. They're actually rice and corn, and they just taste really good. And I think if you're having something like a salad or a soup at work and you want something a bit more interesting, that they're a really good option. I really like the chorizo-like flavour of them, as I said. The smokiness is great, and they're very easily available. I just got these from Sainsbury's. I really enjoy these, and if you don't usually like rice cakes, or you don't stray beyond the plain flavour, I definitely recommend giving these a go, because I have absolutely obliterated a pack of these already, and I'm on to my second one. I've already had some for lunch today with a salad. Really enjoyed these. And Callow is a certified carbon neutral company as well, and it's made in Belgium, which is extra good for me because I'm Belgian. And my last favourite thing is maybe a bit of an odd one. It's not a food item, it's a plate. And this is a plate that I got from Wilko's here in the UK, and it's just a very simple oval or egg shape, as I like to think of it, side plate with a lip. This is a side plate, and I also have one of the dinner plates which I use as a serving platter, and that is huge. I think if you use that as an actual dinner plate, you would serve yourself much too large a portion, and actually what they call the side plate is the size that a dinner plate should be. And I really like this just for eating off it. Obviously, the aesthetics of it appeal to me. I just like the shape, but I also find the lip is very practical, because if you have something that's a little bit saucy, it can just nestle in there and not fall off the edge of the plate. So if you've got a dressing or a tomato sauce or something, it's good for spaghetti dishes, because you can put the spaghetti in there, and there's a little bit of the lip to capture it, so if you don't want to eat out of a very deep bowl. And I actually think the side plate gives, if you put the food in it, it gives you the perfect portion. Really, I find that you can have a very balanced meal off this plate, and it was only £1, which is really good. Obviously Wilkinson's is quite cheap, but I really like eating off this plate. I think it's attractive, I like the colour, and it holds lots of food really well, like salads and spaghetti and so on. So it's been a real favourite of mine, and I've just enjoyed using it. Silly but true. Those were my food favourite items for the month of April. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll put the links to everything below, and I'll see you next month.